Hey, if you were a fan of the band TNT or if you just liked 80s metal, this video is for you. I've been wanting to do this for a while because this band and this album was one of my favorite albums back in the 80s. I just thought this album in particular, Knights of the New Thunder by TNT, was just spectacular from front to back. The way I heard of them is I had a friend in high school. His name was Kurt Bartlett. I know he watches some of these videos, and he's partly responsible for why this channel even exists, because when we were younger, he was always several steps ahead of me when it came to music. As a matter of fact, I mean, he introduced me to bands like Queensryche and these guys. He actually lived in Norway for a while, and when he came back to the United States, he told me about this band called TNT. But this was the album that was out at the time, and it had been released in the United States, so I went and bought this thing, and I just absolutely fell in love with it. Thought the thing was just, from the beginning to the end, the thing was just so cool. It had this really cool guitar playing. The songs were awesome. The singer had this just really, really high-pitched voice that just had I don't know what it was. It just had this ability to cut through in such a way, and somehow the whole thing just spoke to me. And I actually got to see them in concert. I don't remember when it was. I think it was after the next album. And I saw them, I don't know if this is right, but I saw them, I know I saw them with Loudness, and I think that they were opening up for Stryper, as I recall, but I saw them in Red Rocks. TNT is such a fascinating band, partly because they are from Norway. But Tony Harnell, who's the singer, at least on this album and then the following albums, he wasn't the singer on the first album. He actually lived in New York. He was there playing in another band, and he met somebody that was associated with TNT over in Norway, and they said, hey, we'd like you to come over and sing on this album. And so Tony goes over to Norway to sing on what would become the Knights of the New Thunder. And he kind of didn't expect that it would be this long-term thing. He figured he'd go over, help out this band, sing on this album, and then he'd be back in New York playing with his band. Well, little did anybody know, this thing would turn out so well that it would start just getting bigger and bigger until they finally ended up getting this distribution in the United States. And then that's ultimately where I ended up buying it, obviously. And so I got this record, and you put this thing on, and you hear that first song, and it's called Seven Seas. And I don't know what it was about it, but it hit me in such an unusual way, and a little bit like the Immigrant song did with Led Zeppelin. Now, they don't sound anything alike, and I'm not trying to compare the two, but for me, as whatever I was at the time, 14, 15-year-old kid, I heard that song, I heard those lyrics, and it just gave me that kind of that Viking feeling again, kind of like Immigrant song did. Listening to those words, and it just gives you this feeling of, I want to go conquer. I can't explain it, but I just remember feeling that. So anyway, and here's the back of the album. Seven Seas, like I said, is that first tune, and it's I don't know what it was. It's so awesome. And actually, before I started filming this, I just went back and listened to it again because I thought, is it really as awesome as I remember? And it is. I still, to this day, love that song. And so scrolling back through the other songs, Ready to Leave, when you get into that tune, you start realizing that these guys they had a little bit of that, I don't know how to explain it other than to say almost like Dokken energy. You know, the harmonies were so good. It was very melodic. It just had this it was heavy metal, but it had more of that, well, melodic feeling that Dokken kind of really had a strength in. And Ready to Leave is a great example of that. And I loved that tune when I was a kid. Classic Romance is a little kind of a guitar piece, a little bit like Randy Rhoads did with the song D, same kind of idea. Last Summer's Evil is a cool song. And then I got to the end of the first side, which is it has this song Without Your Love. And I don't know why. I didn't necessarily like a lot of the power ballads that came through the 80s, but that tune, as I said, I went through this just before recording, And I listened to that song again. It was just like all the same feelings I had when I was a kid listening to that tune. And I thought, I don't know why, but I love that tune. And I think it's a song that you could probably break out an acoustic guitar today and sing, and it would just be kind of an awesome song. Break the Ice, Eddie, USA. I mean, these were all such cool songs. And I remember going through all these, and then I came to this tune right here, which is called Deadly Metal. And if you've never listened to TNT and you love heavy metal, especially stuff from the 80s, you have to go listen to the song Deadly Metal. The song, I didn't look, but I don't think the thing's more than 3 minutes long. It's a very, very short tune, but it is brutal. It comes in, and the guitarist, this guy, Ronnie Le Tekrø, he just, shreds. And if there was ever a time you could use the word shred, it would be in that song, because there's this point in the song. It's maybe about halfway through. It goes into this guitar solo, and he's just screaming, just this, this just flash, power, speed, and then all the band stops. And he just does this scale, and it's so fast. But it's not just that it's fast. It is reminiscent of a car screeching around a corner. Like you can, like a tire on pavement just going out of control. It is so, I remember listening to that as a kid, and then I go, wait, what did I just listen to? And then you pick up the needle, you put it back, and you just keep listening to that over and over, like, what in the heck is this? And then it's one of those things you start playing for your friends too. You hear this, because of course I was a guitar player and I had all these guitar player friends. I'm like, you have to listen to this guy. I don't know what's going on here, but he just created this screaming, screeching thing that was just different than anything I'd ever heard before. And so at the time, especially when you put it in the context of 1984, it just had this, again, this really powerful, unusual guitar shredding, if you will. So if you've never listened to it, just go find, and you don't listen to anything else on this album, go find the song Deadly Metal, and it'll take, 2.5 minutes out of your day, and it'll be worth it. You get a really good sense of Tony Harnell's voice. You get a sense of the Ronnie Le Tekrø's guitar playing, and it is just a great tune. And then you get to the last one, which is Knights of the Thunder, and it's just, again, it's a great song. And this whole album from front to back, I know a lot of us had those, that there were certain records that for whatever reason, just every single song spoke to you for some reason. And this was one of those for me when I was a kid. I just absolutely loved this thing. And then, of course, they had an album after this, which maybe we'll talk about sometime, called Tell No Tales, which was great. And then I bought that one and the next one, and then I didn't buy anything else after that. Tony Harnell's been in and out of the band a bunch of times over the years. As a matter of fact, he actually sang for Skid Row for a very short period of time too. So let me just show you what's on the inside of the record too. This is the one that I bought when I was a teenager. And of course it has the lyrics on one side, and then on the other side, this, I don't know, pretty cool pictures of the guys. And of course there's Tony Harnell right there. And this is Ronnie Le Tekrø. And he just, again, was just this really unique guitar player. And there's one other thing that I think you'll find kind of interesting, because once they had this thing, they were very famous in Norway, and then they were famous in Japan and different areas of Europe. When they moved over to the United States and they re-released this album, because it had a different album cover originally, I actually think when compared to the other album cover, this one is far, far superior. I just thought this was so cool looking. But one of the things I wanted to show to you here is right there. You'll see the name Doc McGhee. And of course, Doc McGhee, and I think he's actually listed on the back of the album too. Let's see here. It says Management Doc McGhee. So when you go back and look at so many of these 80s groups, I mean, Doc McGhee was responsible for Motley Crue. He was responsible for Kiss. He worked with Bon Jovi. I mean, just go down the line. And it just so happens they did the same thing here with TNT. Anyway, just kind of an interesting little connection there. So one of the things we do on this channel a lot is we'll talk about these things, but then we'll go find some old newspapers and look at the record reviews and see what people actually said about them at the time. And so especially if you're familiar with this album, it's going to be interesting for you to hear what these reviewers had to say about this. And so I found 3 of them, and they're very short, but I think again, if you know about this band and you're interested in them, I think you'll find this kind of interesting. And so this first one is from the Salt Star from September 7th, 1985. And this is in Sault Ste. Marie, Ontario. So this one's from Canada. So this is September 7th, 1985. And it says, TNT blows over and hits North America. Knights of the New Thunder, TNT. Heard any good Norwegian bands lately? Probably not. But every country has its day. After all, the Netherlands gave us Golden Earring. By the way, I feel pretty stupid because I have some Golden Earring stuff, and they obviously had some pretty big hits. I didn't know they were from Netherlands. I'm just learning that right now. Let's see. Germany sent us UFO and the Michael Schenker Group, and Sweden chipped in with Yngwie Malmsteen and ABBA. So why not TNT from Norway? With their debut album, Knights of the New Thunder, TNT appeared to be promising newcomers to the world of heavy metal. Fronted by American singer Tony Harnell, who journeyed to Norway to record with a band he had never seen before. Not only did he beat out former Michael Schenker lead singer Gary Barden, but he completed the album and convinced his 3 new band buddies to move their act to New York City. TNT are loaded with surprises on New Thunder. Their songs are not all throwaway headbangers, and many have catchy riffs and controlled vocals. And that's a really important thing here. It's interesting to use that word, controlled vocals, because Tony Harnell has just this, he has this really pure sounding voice. And it's part of the reason I compare them to Dokken, because Dokken, although he did like scream every once in a while, you'd get that energy out of him. Most of the time, part of why I like Dokken, and I think maybe why a lot of people did, is because he had that just really nice, pure voice. And this Tony Harnell, even though his voice is like much, much higher than Don's ever was, he has a similar approach to this music where it just has this, well, like he says here, controlled vocals. The guy is just top shelf. It's so good. His singing is so good. Okay, guitarist Ronnie Le Tekrø, a classically trained guitarist, plays fast and furious, but doesn't put all the emphasis on speed. His lead also carries the melodies on many of the tracks, letting loose only when the song deems it. Now, this is also such an important thing, because one of the things Gary and I talk a lot about in here is Vinnie Vincent. Vinnie Vincent, when he would play, it was always just fast. How can I cram as many notes as possible in the shortest period of time? And when you listen to the deadly metal thing that I told you a second ago, you can actually, it's a little bit reminiscent of what you would hear from Vinnie Vincent. But the difference between a guy like Vinnie Vincent and then this guy, Ronnie Le Tekrø, is that how does he put it right here? Letting loose only when the song deems it. And it's such an important thing. It's knowing how to self-edit. It's knowing how to, what does this song call for? And then you play what the song calls for. It's one of the reasons, again, the comparisons, it's one of the reasons I love George Lynch so much. Because especially when you go back to Tooth and Nail, Under Lock and Key, especially those two, his guitar playing, you know he can do more than he's doing, but he's doing what's right for the song. And so he writes almost like these great little melodies that fit with the music. And so he has the skill to do anything that anybody else is doing, but that's not the point of his parts. The point of his parts is to enhance the song. And so when you find people like this that have that ability to self-edit and create the thing that works for the song, you have something really special. So George Lynch, Ronnie Le Tekrø, actually this guy is great that way. The guitar lines that he puts in these songs are tastefully done. And then when you get to that song Deadly Metal, even some of the solos that he has, besides the screechy one I talk about, they're just really cool. And he knows when to shred at the right moment, and other moments he knows how to do, let's do something that fits more with this moment in the song. Anyway, it's an important point there. Okay, TNT, like so many heavy metal bands, is burdened with boring, uninteresting lyrics, but then who listens to the words of heavy metal music anyway? And that may be true. As I've said several times on this channel, we have the nostalgia bias a little bit, where I go back and listen to it, and I remember listening especially to the song Seven Seas and how it made me feel listening to those words. We are rulers of the ocean, kings of... Now I got to look at it again. But the words that he uses in there, let's see here. We are rulers of the ocean, kings of seven seas. Strong will fight for king and country, with power left to spare. The longboat force is back again to take on all the world. I don't know what it was about that stuff. Again, it had a little bit of that Viking feel to it, and just those words, I just loved them. So anyway, whatever. It was the lyrics, again, there's so much nostalgia tied into that stuff for me these days, looking back at what they meant to me at the time, that it's hard to get a really, really clear, unbiased opinion of what the lyrics are like at this point in my life. Okay, here's another one. Knights of the New Thunder, Mercury Records. Rock and roll bands who come on as Vikings should have an easy go of it in the heavy metal field, and so it is with TNT, a Norwegian group whose name stands for The New Thunder, which I also didn't realize if that's correct. TNT plays up the Eric the Red heritage to the max, informing us at one point that the longboat force is back again, is one I just was looking at. TNT plays up the, let's see here. Also on the lyrical docket are songs about the usual metal concerns, including Rockin' All Night, Hatchet Murderers, and let's see here, and One Night Stands. Basically, with the loud guitars very tastefully done, by the way, the pounding rhythms and the simple songs, TNT's music is the stuff record ratings are made of. But the Norwegian twist is a new one, and somehow a bit more fun to imagine than the same posturings from Southern California bands. Loud, different, and relatively innocuous, TNT's Knights of the New Thunder gets a B, which is actually kind of surprising. When I went to read these things, I was expecting C's and D's from people, but it seems like people, a little bit, at least at the time, kind of got it. And interestingly, listening to those two people kind of for the same reason. Okay, last one, Knights of the New Thunder, TNT. For the heavy metal fan who also appreciates a softer brand of music, TNT could fill a record library void. The Norwegian band's debut album has a distinctly different flavor, and the taste shouldn't be that hard to acquire. Now, I think they're referring to this as their debut album, but this is not their debut album. This is actually their second album. It's the first one with Tony Harnell singing, though. Sure, there's the thundering drums and the high-energy guitar solos, the mainstay of heavy metal, but some of that tends to get a bit redundant on the title track. It's when they incorporate extra guitar touches and vocal harmonies that this quartet shines. Seven Seas, the first cut on the album, has melody and sensitivity without losing the heavy metal edge. I think they're exactly right about that. Like I said, there was something about the energy that song creates. And even though it doesn't feel like your standard, just in-your-face heavy metal, it creates that energy nonetheless, just listening to it. And from the moment I heard that first song, Seven Seas, I was hooked and loved this band. The next album, loved that next album. Anyway, this was on constant rotation for me. All right, so when I first heard Classic Romance, 58 seconds of predominantly mandolin music. I don't think that's correct. I think it's all guitar, but I thought the album had been changed without my knowledge, after all. The music sounded like it belonged in the European hills. Guitarist Ronnie Le Tekrø's years of classical training come through with a nice touch, yet somehow the tune didn't seem out of place. And of course it didn't seem out of place, because if you're familiar with heavy metal at the time, so many of these guitarists that were coming around were these classically trained guitarists. And I mentioned one of them earlier, Randy Rhoads. You know, he put that song D on an Ozzy Osbourne album. It was just a little classical piece that he'd written for his mother. And then you have people like Yngwie Malmsteen, then he was classically trained, and you would just see more and more of these guitarists that actually had true skill musically, that could read music, that understood it, that were composers. And so it wasn't a surprise when something like that gets thrown in the middle of an album like this, because people were doing it. And so, anyway, just noting that he'd made that point here, and I thought it was worth commenting on. Let's see, nice touch. Yet somehow tune didn't seem out of place. In fact, it led right into the hard driving Last Summer's Evil, which I love all these songs, without missing a beat. The ballad, Without Your Love, is pretty standard, as are several other tracks. And again, that's the one, I'd be lost without your love. That's how it goes. And I think that it's such a beautiful song. I think that one of you guys could do it. Bust out your acoustic guitar, make a video. I know we have a ton of guitar players. It would be a really, really beautiful song as a standalone with somebody playing the acoustic. But overall, this is an interesting group to keep an ear on. And then it's hard to tell what they have here, because it looks like 2.5 stars, but those stars are pretty spread out from each other. And we also don't know what their grading system is. Yeah, it looks like that must be 2.5 stars. So anyway, didn't love it, but they had some nice things to say about it. And anyway, like I said, this album had such an impact on me. And then, like I said, I saw them in concert sometime later, and I believe it was on the next tour. And I just kept loving this music. And even the nice thing that doesn't happen all the time is that I can go back to this album today in my mid-50s and listen to this and still like it. Where I go, you know what? That is good. It actually had some really, really good stuff on it, and I still like it. So anyway, hey, thanks for taking the time to watch this video. If you're not following the channel already, please, we really appreciate you following the channel. Click that like button on the video. And I'd love to get your feedback on this. Do you remember this band? If you never heard this band and you go listen to them, come back to the channel and comment. Let us know what you think about this stuff. And if you did like this band at the time, what was your favorite album? Did you like this one like I did? Because I actually thought this one, even though the next album sold a little bit better, this one I don't think even hit gold. But to me, going back and listening to the albums that I had, this is still my favorite thing they did. I think this was when they were really, really at their peak, at least for me. So anyway, what was your favorite one that you listened to if you were into TNT at the time? And yeah, and with that, have yourself a fantastic day.